So we are so happy today to see all of you and to welcome you. We know that right now is a very special and unique time, and it's hard to focus on anything because we have so many things going through our minds, but we're glad that you're here and you want to talk about fundraising. And we have Sherry to really thank and to, I like to say, swim in her brain to
I love
learn
that. Come
about.
on in. Come
Yeah,
into the deep end.
exactly. Splash around. Such great experience and such great advice right now, especially around fundraising and uncertainty. So please introduce yourself in the chat. And we really just want to talk about some of the misconceptions that organizations have in thinking about fundraising that existed before, but might be impacting the way that you think about fundraising post-COVID and in this time that we're in. Things that might be holding you back. And we want to give a little bit of context just about who we are. So I'll go first and we'll have Sherry introduce herself. So my name is Heather Hiscox and I'm co-founder with Amelia Claywan of a company called Pause for Change. And we really help organizations address challenges or pursue really exciting opportunities more efficiently and effectively. We have a really simple 5-skill process that we teach organizations to really reduce uncertainty and to use fewer resources and less time to achieving greater impact, essentially is what we do. Work everything from small grassroots, local, rural organizations to large national affiliate focused organizations. So Sherry, why don't you introduce yourself?
Happy to. Thanks everybody for letting me visit Arizona today, I guess.
Exactly.
So my name is Sherry Quam Taylor and I'm talking to you from Chicago. And I have the privilege of working with nonprofit leaders who want to diversify their funding. And so I work with a lot of people who are maybe feeling like they're a little too heavily dependent on either government revenue, program revenue, or event revenue, which right now has been stressful. And I teach them how to pivot into a funding model that helps them secure larger gifts from individuals. And so a lot of the people I work with are absolute subject matter experts in their mission and their program, but haven't ever known or needed to know how to actually move into a major gifts portfolio with individuals. And so that ask feels scary, or that process seems a little bit of a mystery. And so I teach leaders of nonprofits how to actually do that. And I do all my coaching virtually. Actually, pre-COVID, I did it all virtually. So that's kind of nice right now. And I do private coaching, kind of one-on-one intensives. And I also do a 90-day fundraising accelerator that teaches leaders how to find and secure their top 30 donors every year.
Great. Awesome. So I'm going to jump right in with my first question. So in our work, we really help disrupt patterns and habits that people and organizations have of how they pursue opportunities and really create change. And we love bringing new thinkers together. And that's really why Sherry and I connected, was the way that she talks about things like, oh, I like this. It's a little bit different. There's a twist on it. So Sherry, what are some old beliefs and strategies that didn't really work well pre-COVID, but don't really serve nonprofits right now, and whatever this new normal is that we're creating?
Right. And this is, I mean, we've kind of connected on LinkedIn, and if you see me on there, this is my message, or this has been my message since mid-March. And it's my favorite conversation right now, because as I've watched organizations, enter this time and then struggle or be somewhat successful during this time, I've really been looking at what was the funding model that they were operating on or striving toward before COVID, and how did that serve them during COVID, or and kind of on a go forward basis. And so it's interesting, because a lot of the advice I would that I probably will give you today would have been the same advice that I would have given you beforehand, but there are some nuances. So I think the biggest thing for me that, gosh, if COVID can do one thing for us, it really would be to that it has, I think, put some of these misconceptions out on the table for us to say, those weren't right. Those were unrealistic expectations for us, you, who lead nonprofits. And so, I'm going to start right here. Let's just crack open the can of worms here, Heather.
Mhm.
I'm going to start with, overhead is not a bad word. We've been, a lot of people who aren't as knowledgeable about, funding and giving. It's like, well, talk to me about your percentages. How much is going to the field, right? And we know that what have you needed most? If you're running a nonprofit, what have you needed in the last 3 months? You've needed a reserve. You've needed cash in the bank. You've needed money to keep your staff in place. You've needed money to invest in technology and things that would be traditionally overhead. And so this whole concept of nonprofits should be able to do more with less, like, is bonkers. Like, it's just, it doesn't make sense. And so, especially right now, when you guys, I mean, you've served more people, you've served in deeper ways, you've changed your programs on a dime. This is the time where you've needed to have the resources to do that. And so I hope and pray on an ongoing base, or kind of forward looking trajectory, that the donors and the funders and those of you leading nonprofits, we really looked at each other and say, that actually is not the model. That's not the model that's going to push us forward. Now, I will tell you that my clients who, or let me just kind of give you a little bit of practicality in the kind of fully funded and the programs and admin and fundraising and what it really means to invest in overhead. So I am a strong believer, and this is the methodology I teach to all my clients, and it helps them grow, that we cannot overspend in our programs. We must be investing in our programs, of course, but we have to be spending a solid amount in our admin and ops as well as our fundraising. So if someone comes to me and I see that their funding has plateaued or they're just stuck a bit, or another model, maybe they bring in a lot of program revenue or government revenue, but very little charitable, I go straight to the 990 and I go straight to seeing where they're spending money versus making money. Because to grow your organization, you have to be spending money on admin and ops and fundraising just alongside program. And so some years, I'm an advocate of you investing 15 to 20% of fundraising into your budget. Because guess what? That means in 2 years, you're going to have twice as much money to do twice as much program. So I really hope that these types of conversations are heard in a greater way as we move forward, because this is really, this kind of us kind of saying, oh, I guess this is how the industry is, or buying into those misconceptions is keeping organizations from actually raising more money.
Absolutely. And we've talked about that, you and I, about some of the stuff that was normal was totally wacky. Like the stuff that we said okay, and like we were complicit in participating in, like the games we engaged in and the ways that we did this work, like super wacky. And for us, I know it gives us a lot of hope. Like we could reimagine. And right now we're seeing funders and foundations really being nimble and quick and responsive and more empathetic and just all the changes. We're seeing like this light, this opportunity of like, ooh, like how do we keep that momentum going?
Yes.
How do we keep moving forward?
You're so right. And I think like it's little things too. It's I was going to give some examples, like it's these comments that we're so used to making, like okay, let's talk about events, even though we can't have them right now. It's like, let's have this event, let's have it be the best thing in town, let's have it raise tons of money. But could we also try to get everything for free? Like, don't spend any money on it, right? And like, can we get this for free? Can we get this for free?
Yeah.
Like, those two things don't really jive. Or, it might be, let's roll out this whole new thing that we need to do, but oh gosh, we got to find a volunteer to do it, or we can't do it, right? And so, and then the other, like, I think the concept of a reserve, I've always been an advocate of strong reserves and putting that in your budget and raising toward it. this concept, or there's a lot of funders who want to know your reserve. And I think it's like, it's always kind of a funny question to me, because it's, somebody thinks a 9-month reserve is giant. The next person thinks a 1-month reserve is giant. So it's kind of funny. But I really do hope some of the kind of the mindset and threshold around, some funders saying, well, if you have more than X in the bank, like we won't fund you, or so many months in the bank. This has really proven that those types of things that we said, oh, okay, that must be the way it's going. You've got to own and explain why you need to do it. You've got to be confident presenting your growth plan and saying, actually, I'm so glad you asked that question. Here's why I'm actually raising a large reserve right now, because here's what I'm going to do here. Or I'm going to scale up, and I want to make sure that I can take advantage of that opportunity when it comes my way. And so, like, I love, I said her name wrong for first, Mara or Mara. I think it's Mara. Your question, do donors understand that we need to invest in overhead? So here's where you have to be the educator. So you have to be the translator between, here's our plans, here's where we're going, here's what I'm doing this year, because next year I'm gonna do this, because in 5 years I'm gonna be here. You have to make sure you're sitting down and having investment level conversations with donors, even individual donors, about how you're going to spend the money. And so I'm a strong believer in moving into these investment level conversations with individuals who can write investment level checks, and leaning into, here's why I'm spending more in this area this year, because here's the plan next year. And so I'm going to say yes to your question here, because donors are I think more donors are learning that you have to invest in it, but you really have to be the driver of that conversation. And, I'm going to say, stand at the table and own it, and be confident that the best for your business you're running, and lead the donor to a deep understanding in what you need to grow the organization. Last thing I'll say, we'll jump ahead, but the question I always get is, well, our board wants, or I guess comment, I should say, our board wants as much money to go to programs as possible this year, so we can't spend money on that. But oftentimes that thing we say, no, we can't spend money on, helps us make more money, which then helps you put more money into programs in about 2 years. And so even when a decade plus ago, left corporate and joined a nonprofit, and from day one was like, those are crazy rules. Why would we do that? Some of these types of things we're talking about today, we were spending too much on program. And so we actually pulled that down and really invested in admin and fundraising. And within a few years, we were putting triple into program, because we spent the money on learning how to do that. So you have to spend money in admin and fundraising to put more money back into programs.
Mm-hmm. I totally agree. And it is that re-education, because we have accepted these other kind of odd standards. I love your suggestion of you have to educate donors.
Yeah, you kind of manage up a little bit, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So we help organizations get clarity and alignment around their key challenges and about the stakeholders they serve and what they need to go learn. But what are some things that you see organizations struggling with right now? And what are some key blind spots that they need to take into consideration and be aware of right now with COVID?
Yeah. So one thing that comes to mind is this concept of what your organization needs. And here's what I mean by that. The number one thing that I believe keeps organizations from growing their funding is actually their approach to budgeting. And this is always a weird conversation, because even when I start with clients, they're like, no, hold on, why are we starting with the budget today? Hold on, hear me out here. And so I always ask someone, when they call me or whatever, I'll say, so what do you need this year? In essence, I'm like, what do I need to raise, or what's my budget? And so I often will get a comment like, well, last year, I'll use a round number so I don't have to do math. Last year we brought in $1 million. And so we'd love to do more than that, because we want to do this and this and this, or we'd love to do 1.1, right? In essence, what the answer is, we want to do a little more. But as I dig and as I kind of pull the pieces away, I'll hear things like, well, but we have a waiting list. Oh, well, yeah, and I didn't replace that person when they left, or nope, we don't have, we haven't started our fundraising initiatives and we're really heavily dependent over here, or, we aren't in essence budgeting to the things that help us raise funds. And so 99% of the people who come to me aren't actually raising or budgeting to the right number that helps them grow. And so even right now, I want you to think about this concept of like, it is your job to share the need of the organization with the greater public. Because COVID or not, you still have a need. And so we have to make sure, especially right now, you've really looked at what is your true annual need. That's usually different from your budget. You might have your board approved budget and they said $1 million, like we'd love to do more, but let's see. Like, you know what? We don't have a reserve, like, gosh, we've depleted it. You might need to be raising toward 1.3. And so I want you then to be confident sharing with donors, we have a $1.3 million need. Could I share with you what that looks like this year? But you have to have the plan to then drive that forward and then share that with people that you're coming in contact with. And so this concept of budget versus need seems kind of simple and practical. I got to tell you, it's a game changer, because if you have created a budget that is based on your true need. One time a guy says, he raises his hands, he's like, so you want me to do an honest budget? Like I was like, yes, I love that, an honest budget. If we don't have an honest budget and say, my goodness, it is 1.3. It is because we want to do all these things and I've been skimping over here. There is no way you will put together a development plan that would hit the 1.3. If you're not, like, if you need to get there, like, and you set your budget at $1 million, you're maybe going to stumble up to that $1 million mark. But if you don't set it at 1.3, like, your development plan is not going to reflect that. And so if you're creating the right budget, I guess I'll say, it will help you create a reserve. It will help you have a cash balance. It will help you be fully funded, program, admin, and fundraising. It will help you inspire your donors to help you hit that need. And so don't assume your donors understand what you need. They rarely do. They rarely understand, oh, I see all the great things you're doing. Oh, so I understand you don't need me to write that $5,000 check I've been writing. You need me to write a $25,000 check. You are the one who has to connect that by sharing the need of the organization.
That makes sense. And it connects to Jackie's question, is to our next question, is that one of the key principles that the organizations we work with learn is how to use the power of empathy, how to really walk in the shoes of donors at all levels, whether it's like corporate engagement, it's foundation engagement, it's one-on-one donors. Like, how do you understand from their perspective what the giving experience feels like?
Yeah.
And then to Jackie's question, I'm concerned about timing. We're considering initiatives starting mid-spring, but they step back because now you're competing with like immediate and emergency relief needs. So if you could speak about that, I think that's super interesting. Of like, what are donors thinking about, and how do you incorporate that right now in this larger conversation?
Yes, thank you for that question, Jackie. That's, I think, the most the timing and like, is it okay, kind of thing right now is still a question I'm getting. I'm going to talk a little bit out of both sides of my mouth here, Heather. So for context in me answering this question, I work with organizations to help them find and then secure their top 30 donors. And those I usually want yielding about between 50 and 75% of the revenue. So as you can imagine, I'm going to answer this with those top donors in mind, because gosh, those are the ones we have to get every year, right? That's where your time needs to be spent. So those donors, those people who we're having like these investment level conversations with, those are of course very deep intimate relationships, right? Like we know them, we know their job, their work, their families, their highs, their lows. And so the thing is with that group, if you're doing it correctly, like you're already very deep in kind of living life with them. And so you know what's changed in their lives, and you can frankly be natural about it and have that conversation. So like Jackie, with you, it's like, I know the concern is there, but especially with your top level donors, who I'm guessing that strategy lays on top of this, um, you know, don't stop communicating with them. Stay in relationship with them. Of course, you're going to be, maybe there's an edge of caution, and just extra listening during this time. But the key is, and you know, ahead of time as you're thinking forward too, the key is that you're really in relationship with them to a point where you know if it's too much, or you know if we should step back, or you know if I still need to share what our need is because they're really passionate about our organization. Now, here's the other thing I'm going to say to this topic, Heather, if I can, and kind of the talking out of both sides of my mouth. I see in general in the industry a lot of money left on the table when we as fundraisers make a decision before the campaign, appeal, or ask even happens about what that donor or what that network's best gift is. So like if you hear people say, okay, let me introduce you to my colleague. I'm sure they could give $20,000, but like, let's just ask them for 10. Like, I don't want to offend them. I don't want to, like, we're kind of making that decision before we've even gotten in the room, right? Or, you know, or like, let's not ask them for that. Let's ask them for this. Or we're kind of deciding that this is a bad time for them. It must be because everybody's struggling right now. So let's set back. And so I think when we are tempted to make that decision for our donor, when we've never seen their bank account, we don't know the money they have or what they want to give, I would say just check to see like what's really behind that. And so a lot of times it's maybe things like, you know, you're maybe not confident in the ask, or you're worried you're not quite doing it right. So let me just kind of sit back a little bit. Or oftentimes it's because we haven't taken the time to build that pipeline of large donors. And so we feel like, okay, let's just get 5 instead of the 20 they're going to ask because like we really need that gift. You know, we're kind of almost settling for gifts. Or it could just be as simple as like we're really uncomfortable with that concept of the ask that I want done one-on-one in person in non-COVID times. And when we do that, sometimes we are like almost like underselling our mission for what it's worth because we aren't confidently sitting at the table and asking for what we need.
And that brings up the question, how are people doing? I wonder in the chat if people can share. But if you're used to one-on-ones, right? Let's go grab lunch. Let's go have a happy hour. Let's go do this. Like, what are organizations doing right now when they can't like go to your family room and go talk to a donor or go grab that lunch? Like, what are you seeing that's creative and cool?
Yeah, I'd love to hear if anybody in the chat is actually doing solicitations on Zoom. Yeah, like literally before March 15th, when I was talking about top 30 donors, I'm talking about one-on-one solicitations. I'll always have somebody raise their hands and say, can I email them? Or we do that, we send a letter, or yeah, we have an event. It's not quite what I'm talking about. So before, you know, mid-March, I would have said, no, you must do it in person. You can't do it on Zoom. You got to fly there. You got to go do it. Now here, you know, I've been schooled, you know, the last 2 months too. So I bring that up because if you were living this pattern and rhythm of relationship building, it was a way, you know, you're probably feeling like it was a way more natural transition to Zoom. And so I've really encouraged my students to continue hopping on Zoom and having that quick coffee, or having that, I just want to share with you what your gift is doing. Like, do you have 15 minutes? Like, I'm really excited to share this with you. And just to still be in relationship with them. I have some clients getting the largest gifts of their careers on Zoom. And it's not like they had the magic sauce on Zoom. It's that they did the work to lead the donor into deep relationship and led them in a way that it helped them say yes when they needed to say yes. And so there's an element of creativity, I suppose, Heather, in trying to do some of these different things. But, I would say, like, if you're on this call and, for example, I'm working with a group who they are a 501c3, but all of their funding has really been government contracts and program revenue. And so they're actually starting their charitable giving program. So I love that they're taking advantage of this opportunity now to say, we want to come out of this different because we realized we needed more flexible cash going into this. And so it's like, you get to start now. You get to start connecting and just sharing, how you've pivoted during this time and just starting to build that relationship. And those are the seeds you're planting for donors who might give in 6 months, in 12 months, in 18 months, and sometimes 2 years. And so if you aren't doing that, today's the day. Like, you get to start today and move into a stronger funding model, even during this time.
Yeah, that's what you and I are talking about. There was an organization that they're CDFI. So right now, like, they are the most important person in the community in some ways, because they're handling out, SBA loans and PPP loans and all of the things. Like, they're a go-to agency, but they don't have any individual donors.
Right.
They've all been like government funded or partnership grants or, things like that. And so they're now saying, how might we even understand the landscape of foundations and funders and individuals, and what does that even look like? And to Jackie's point, you were saying, we're really new. You don't have an existing base of funders, although you have supporters, right? You already have a list of folks that you think would love you and want to support, maybe some online crowdfunding options as well as one-on-one Zoom meetings. Do you have tips for someone that is starting new and they don't have their go-to?
I do. It's always funny. I never assume you have the 30 donors. Like sometimes people are like, sure, I know you're talking about like securing the gift, but I got to find the people first. I was like, that's okay. We can do that too.
Yep.
So here's the thing I would say to you. So first, make sure you are anybody you're talking to. I don't care what size donor it is or connector or anything. Make sure you're sharing your need, not your budget, right? Because like, if you have the opportunity to start from scratch and from, out of the gate, share your need, now we're talking here. Okay, so what I would do is I would still have just as many meetings with, I would say, don't even say like I need to find major donors, but with the most connected people Like, I'll always start with, let's go talk to and raise the sites and get practicing sharing, where we're going, what we're doing this year, what our programs are, what our impact is, and what our financial need is. And then sharing with people, like, or asking people, I should say, is there anybody in your world who A, would be interested in hearing what I've shared with you today? And B, has the ability to, or maybe interest in investing in something like this. So you have to run a really wide connector strategy, but I would still do it one-on-one when you can, because those people who know and love you and want to see you succeed, they will connect you. You will get up the ladder to that first round of funders. And so, but it's all about sharing the need and sharing and really demystifying what the financial need is, so using some tools that, like a pitch deck or gift chart that would allow you to talk about the types of gifts you're needing right now.
Mm-hmm. Carrie has a good point. Find out what's important to your donor. Absolutely.
100%. You nailed it, Carrie. Yeah, always in all of this, I'm saying, serve what they value. Why are they giving to you? What do they value about the relationship? Like everything, what's the heartbeat? Is it metric based? Is it heart based? Is it whatever? And serve that all day long. You nailed it, Carrie.
Mm-hmm. And Sabrina, so you haven't done a solicitation on Zoom, but you did a planned gift solicitation over the phone. You're reaching out to donors, checking on them and thanking them. Yeah.
Yeah, so good. Another little bit of, even I think, I don't know if Jackie, you have some people who maybe did give in the past. Another little tip that I've been giving people, as they're like, where do I start this if I know I have some people who maybe they've given to your organization in the past, or maybe they gave at year end, and you know that wasn't their best gift? Because I want every donor giving their best gift. I want you to lead every donor on a path so they give their best gift. If you know you have some people who aren't giving their best gift, like now's the perfect time just to reach out and say, you know, Chris and Sue, could I just hop on? I'm doing Friday morning coffees. I'd love to just have one with you and share with you what your gift is doing. Not asking you for a thing, but I'd love to share with you the gift that you made, in January is doing, or December, whatever it is. Knock their socks off. Spend 20 minutes with them. Tell them what their gift has been doing through this time. Give them that sense of assurance that it was a really good investment. That really felt, that felt well, like they used our money well. And wow, not anybody else reaches out to tell us what their gift was doing one-on-one. Like in the back of their mind, we should give again, right? So like that type of activity gets them on the journey so that then you can actually lead them in a really great way to soliciting them this year.
In so many organizations, there's been such shifts. You and I talked about it too, that some advice we've been giving people is, yes, think about your organization, think about your donors, but do not forget to lift your head up and look at the ecosystem in your community. Because
Yes.
we're hearing from communities where, for example, food banks have some have more resources than they've ever had right now.
Right.
And there's one in a city. It's not Tucson. It's another city.
Yeah.
But it's a food bank where they now are wanting to play a role in like 360 social service provision.
Wow.
They want a one-stop shop. They want to say, okay, you came in for food, but while you're here, we want to make sure you have health and dental, and your
Wow.
children have access to resources, and you have housing needs. And what that's going to do is it's going to create a ripple in that community. If that organization already had a lot of strength, they have more resources than ever, and now they're
Yes.
looking at expansion and kind of stepping in to some other areas. That's going to keep happening as organizations merge and close and grow
Yeah.
and shift. And so I think organizations have to stay really nimble and on top of their game of what's happening in the ecosystem.
Yes.
And how that impacts their donors, and how they need to keep incorporating that into how they message and do outreach.
Heather, like in all of the, of course I've done a few extra podcasts and webinars and, talks in the last however many days it's been. And I think like you're hitting on something that I've tried to integrate into a lot of what I'm talking about. And even though like in full respect of how absolutely difficult this time has been for so many, and doors have closed and it's like day by day, not even month by month, I've tried to balance that with like that's a really encouraging thing too. Like this organization is being well funded and it's opening other opportunities to serve in a greater way. And so I mean, there's a lot of wonderful things going on right now. I'm so humbled by the generosity of individuals, foundations, corporations at this time. It has been like a remarkable thing for me to kind of sit here in the front row and watch generous spirits give during this time. It's actually been a really wonderful thing. And so like I love that, because it's just what an opportunity that the people they're already serving are going to be served in a greater capacity through this. And then it's actually completely changing their model to transform their city. It's really remarkable sector that we're in when I hear stories like that.
Absolutely. And the collaboration, the
The
stuff that we all
collaboration,
wanted
yeah.
to do, like you got to do it now. And
Yes.
what's the potential? Like what's there that could happen? And
Yes.
how donors have stepped up is amazing.
Yes.
And as I'm not a major donor, but like giving little gifts, it's been really interesting to see. Like I don't have expectations of like, I don't need to thank you in 24 hours, 48 hours in a call. And I think people are also like giving a little bit of space to organizations. So if you show up in a way that's very powerful, and you show up in that thank you, and you make sure that donor experience is exquisite, you're going to stand out even more, I think, in this moment. And we had talked about this as well. Like some organizations are backing off on fundraising, they're backing off on volunteer engagement because they're just not sure. And it's going to take years to come back from
Yeah.
that, from backing off from that. So I love what you're saying about invest in admin, invest in fundraising. It will help you now and it will help you later. It's an investment for the
Yes.
future.
Yes. That's in like you've kind of like stepped up on my other soapbox, which is thanking and exceeding donors' expectations, and in really using that that response, like you're getting some thank yous and going, oh my gosh, it was really nice during this time when I know you're super busy. Like that, taking the time to just exceed that donor's expectations, even now when it's really hard, will pay off in the long run and keeps those donors giving every year. When people say to me, a donor, I don't know, they gave us $5,000 this year. We just didn't hear from, or last year, we just didn't hear from them this year again. We didn't hear from, I go straight to, how did you respond to the last gift? Like 9 times out of 10, it's like, because that response is you getting your donors into the journey for their next gift. And so, exceed expectations. That's my number one rule in thanking. If a donor says, oh my gosh, you didn't have to do that, or excuse me, a nonprofit, donor says, you didn't have to do that. I love hearing that, because you're right, we didn't, but that's something we really value. And we are passionate about showing you the impact that your gift made. So we did it, right? And that's just a win-win for both of you.
Yeah, we call it the love strategy.
That's cute. Yeah.
It's really the value streams. Like, how do we create value for people? And there's multiple steps. And often what we find in program enrollment, engagement, donor recognition, people get people to what we call convince, right? There's money that
Yes.
exchanges hands. There's a transaction of some kind. But then people are sitting, and we call it this like this murky, awful space of hopefulness, right? They're not yet satisfied. You've
Yes.
convinced them, they've taken the action you want, but they're just sitting in this, purgatory of hopefulness, and they're waiting. As much as they might not say it, like they're waiting for recognition, they're waiting for thanks, they're waiting for your next e-newsletter, they're waiting for the
Right.
next something, right? Contact or connection, because they're thinking like, I hope, gosh, I'm also don't have a lot of money right now. I hope that was $100 well spent.
Yeah.
And we have to get them to satisfaction, which means like they got it, they were financially able to steward my cash,
I
right? Like
love that. I
they
love this,
received
Heather.
it, they recognized it, they said thank you, and that's just satisfaction. But the end goal is passion,
Yes.
like what Sherry
Oh,
was talking
so
about,
good.
and will help Jackie is like, if you don't get people to passion, what are they going to do with that? They're probably only going to give that one-time gift. And if you look at the data, that chasm between first and second gifts just gets deeper and wider, year over year. It's insane right now. And online giving also makes that quite skewed and wacky.
Yes. Yes.
And so many organizations don't have a love or engagement strategy. They haven't thought through what's that experience, what's the journey of a brand new donor,
Right.
what's the journey of an annual donor that might have given for 5 years, what is the
Right.
experience with someone that's make a planned gift. We don't think that through, and we get so busy that we don't slow down in
Yeah.
order to accelerate our outcomes that could be really amazing.
So amazing. Can I add one little thing to that? Because that was so
Yes,
good, what you just said right
please.
there. I'm
Yeah,
like,
yeah, yeah,
oh,
yeah.
I got so excited when you talked about that. Um, when you were saying, like, we want to move them to passion, like, you're so right. Now, here's what is, like, I think kind of a mystery sometimes. There are the donors who, like, passion is the program, passion is the story, passion is the outcome, that you really moved, the graduation rate from here to here, or that one person's life was transformed. If that is that donor's ultimate passion and vision and reason why they give, feed, right? We want to feed that. For some investment level donors, I'm talking a lot about like we got to stop leaving money on the table here today. For some investment level donors, when I say that, I mean someone who really like wants to almost be like a stakeholder in your organization, someone who really wants to see you grow. Don't forget that sometimes their passion is like way more of a, I guess I'm going to say like a business transaction. And what I mean by that is, if a lot of these types of people that we are sitting down one-on-one talking to, they are successful business owners themselves. They have sat down and done investment asks before. they are leaders in the community, entrepreneurs in their own right. And so sometimes their passion actually lies in that. And they want to know, they're really passionate about helping you scale the business you're running that is the mission. So like, don't be afraid to lean into those business level discussions with those people, because it might be a little hard. Like, it's probably rooted in there, but so often the way to the heart with an investment level donor is often having some of those business conversations and those very transparent, here's where we're struggling growing, or here's how we're funded, here's how we're investing in this area. Things that you think, I don't know, do they want to know that? That seems like all boring stuff for my 990. They do. So I just wanted to add to that sometimes the passion is like, I want to help you grow the business. It's that CFO who says, how are you going to get to $1 million? How are you going to get to $5 million? That question is coming from a root of like, how are you as a business person leading this going to scale the organization? Because I want to give to someone who can show me they can do that and has a plan to do that and is executing it.
Yeah, it's that platinum rule, right? Like, do unto others is like meeting them where they are. What did they want? It's not what you want. It's not the golden rule. It's even more than that. And so I love that idea of further customization, further segmentation. Like, your donors just aren't your donors by gift level and frequency and gift size. They're also by passion. Like, you can group them by passion. Like, what gets this person excited, and you can match your response and engagement to what those types of donors want. And we see in our work all the time, you and I have chatted about this, like, one size fits all is our favorite thing to do in this sector, because we just think we don't have time to customize. But that's where relationships are. That's where you get from treating someone like an ATM machine to treating them like an authentic partner in your mission. And it's all about changing those behaviors and expectations to achieve those better outcomes.
And I always say, like, and what sometimes I'll take surveys before I talk, and I always ask the question, like, what's keeping you from raising more money? Time is always the number one. I don't know that it's ever not been the number one. And I hear you, like, this is when I'm like, I know, I've been in your shoes. I wore 9 million hats and like somehow came out alive. Like, I totally hear you. But even more reason that you need to focus your time on these types of customization things you're talking about, because like, I want you really focused on your top 30 donors. Those donors should be yielding between 50 and 75% of your revenue. And so if you want to be fully funded this year, that's where you got to spend your time. So like, if you're the leader, if you're the fundraiser, and we got to look at ROI here, like, every hour you're spending fundraising has to be rooted in the activities that are going to lead you to those gifts. Because if you don't get those gifts, you will not be funded. And so like, it's a whole, so the time put into that, even though it feels like, how would I even segment that list? And like, oh my gosh, we got to find something to take off your plate that is low ROI, or that you don't have to be doing, or that served you up to this point in your organization, but isn't going to serve you going forward. We have to take that off your plate so you can start doing the more strategic activities that then lead to the size gifts that will fund your organization.
Absolutely. And I want to do that coughing thing where I say events.
Oh yeah.
Those are always like the biggest time sucks ever. And you're like, and people don't even know how to optimize the event experience to even leverage the gifts that can come from it. So
I've been accused of like hating events. I don't hate events. I do not hate events. I don't like when events, like in essence have hijacked people's funding models and like, really put them in a tough place right now. A lot of times we start events too early when we don't have our large gift strategy in place, when an event really needs to fit underneath that umbrella. It's not a standalone. It's really a step in a lot of our large donors' experience. And so, I'm accused of not liking them. I'm like, I love going to a good event. I like, when they're well done and it's really fun, but I also see them as keeping organizations from moving into those top 30 gifts because the time it takes, it takes a lot of time, and it's not yielding kind of that 3-to-1 ratio that I want it making if it's successful.
Absolutely. And I like what Sabrina put in the chat. We went from a monthly newsletter to weekly for the first 6 weeks, and then now you're doing bi-weekly. And people love knowing, and I do get those newsletters. People love knowing how you've pivoted and how you've continued to do your work. And the newsletters are helping raise more money. That's such a great
So
example.
good. Congratulations, Sabrina.
That's awesome. So that was my next question. It's perfectly positioned. You guys are just rocking the chat,
Thank you for
helping
making
with
this
the
easy for
questions.
us.
Exactly. What are other creative things that you're seeing? In a couple minutes, and we'll open up for more questions. Like, what
Sure.
are some
Yeah.
other cool stuff that you're seeing that organizations are doing to pivot and kind of drum up their activity?
Yeah, you know what's funny? I struggle sometimes with this question a little bit, and maybe it's because I am so. I'm sure I'm seeing like neat creative things. Like, I mean, Sabrina's newsletters are a perfect example of that, or something really unique for, um, events. But like I struggle with the question a little bit because in my world where I'm like, it's so like in the trenches, deep, slowly guiding donors through these journeys, it's less about creativity and more about like, I mean, kind of yawn, like the discipline to be in the slow game with that and not give up and be like, oh, let's just go over here and do an appeal, or let's just go over here and do a Facebook fundraiser. And so to me, the organizations who I have been also inspired by during this time are the ones who have kind of pushed into that space that like feels risky and said, we can't we can't keep doing what we've been doing, and so we're actually going to kind of lean into this risk and learn how to do new things. And a lot of people are coming to me. I had a client, I love how she said that. She said, I'm kind of looking at this as I need to learn how to find major donors and like secure individual gifts during summer school, so that when I go back to school, like summer breaks over, like we're running and gunning. And I like, it's probably less answering your question of creativity, but I would also say that like those are the activities and those are the risks that I really believe we have to take more of in nonprofits. Like we kind of hold, like, for an example, like Charity Water up on a pedestal, appropriately so. They're amazing, but like you think like they spend money, they risk doing new things, they risk trying new campaigns, they are trailblazers. And we want to be like them, but that risk feels really scary, so let's just stay over here and do what we're doing. And so I think that people have said that we've got to fix our model, which means me as the leader learning how to do something different or learning a new skill that's going to then level up my organization, to me is the bravest thing people are doing right now. um, and I think like that kind of thing, I kind of started by saying I was really looking at the funding model that people were putting in place, and kind of seeing the strength of that to this time. I think like really being reflective and saying that worked then, and this isn't going to work going forward, and leaning into that and saying we're going to push ahead and do something new and different, and balance our funding out so that we can pivot in times of crisis, or let's keep it positive, take advantage of opportunities that come our way, when we get invitations to do partnerships together, or when we have the opportunity to hire somebody who moved back to the city and was like, oh my gosh, they would be amazing at this. And so I would say like that's really inspiring me from a like what am I seeing these days, because to me that's indicating a change in the industry that is needed.
Absolutely. Well, I want to open it up to any questions you have, anything you
Sure.
want to put in the chat, or I don't have anyone muted. You can unmute yourself and you can reveal yourself. Many of you are hiding. We can't see you, which we do as well. Might not be a camera ready day, but we would love to hear any questions you have. And while you type those, we love the idea of risk, and the work that we do. We help people de-risk what they're going to jump into, so they don't build these entire programs or projects or services without co-creating with community and testing with experimentation. And I think risk is something we are so afraid of, but there are ways and small steps that you can take to really try something new. And Amelia, our co-founder, was talking about, she attended a webinar and the person said, this is the end of the world as we know it. And what she meant by that was, kind of a fun reference to REM, but it was also like, everything has changed. So what an amazing opportunity to jump into this new space, doing things very differently. And if you all don't have a question, I have another question I would love to ask. Oh, go ahead. Yes.
Hi, this is Mara. And
Hi, Mara.
my question is, so before, Sherry, when you were talking about you have this business plan and really asking for what you need, how transparent do you think we should be with that investment level person? Like, do we kind of, and I'm really new to the fundraising piece. Should I be showing them, here are the parts that we need to fund, or should I be specifically pointing out parts to them that I think might be interesting?
Yeah, good question. So, so here's the thing. You can be pretty darn transparent. Kind of my meter or my line I would go back to would be, all your information is on your 990. So like I can go Google right now and go find anything financial you're going to give me or show me, right? So there's very little that is secret. On the flip side of that, I would say, but I want you to put it into a format that helps the donor understand what they need to do, right? And so I would say to you, maybe it's things like taking your overall need, again, I'll use my round number, let's say you have $1 million need, and really showing them in big pots how everything you've talked about today, or all the programs, all the work you're doing, how that fits into those three categories, how it fits into programs, how it fits into admin, and how it fits into fundraising. So I always want you sharing the top level need, leading with, we have $1 million need this year. Then if the donor really values, let's pretend, you have a literacy program, one of those. And if the donor, like the whole time, like they wanted to talk about this one specific program, I might tone the conversation and kind of bring up examples of that type of work to feed that interest that they have. Sometimes they're going to say, well, how much does that cost? And you're going to be transparent and show them that. However, when it comes to soliciting, I want to make sure that you've then guided the donor to a gift that then hopefully is unrestricted and is tied to the overall need of the organization. Now, there's always donors who want to fund that specific project, and we have to be respectful of that. But in most cases, when you've done a good job conveying the overall arc of the organization's need, usually when you get to solicitation, you can solicit just based on the overall need and not have to worry about a restricted gift. Does that help? Okay, good. I got a thumbs up.
Yes, that's super helpful. And actually everything you both said today is so helpful. So thank you.
I'm so glad.
That's great. Any other questions or things that you're grappling with fundraising right now? Other people can definitely learn from you. If you have anything you want to ask in the chat, or you can still be mysterious and we can hear your voice.
That's awesome. I appreciate all the feedback and good questions during, I guess we covered quite a few of them during this session, so that's perfect.
Absolutely. Well, Sherry, it's just, I don't see questions popping up, so let's wrap it up. And
awesome.
I thank you so much. I love the way that I can tell you guide people with patience and clarity. And we often say, don't get overwhelmed with all the steps and all the things. What's the next step?
Yes, that's
what's
so
the
good.
next action or step you can take to get you to that goal? So what's the one thing you could do this week without thinking about the 449 things you could do this week?
Yeah.
And what can you do to move people forward? I love that focus on the fundamentals, right? The relationship building fundamentals of growing the capacity of your organization, having honest conversations about admin and ops and fundraising investments, how to have transparency with donors, and how to keep them engaged so that you can grow those high investment gifts. I think it's just great.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I've enjoyed the conversation.
Absolutely, absolutely. If you want to follow up with Sherry, do you want to share more about where they can find you?
Oh, sure. So my name is Sherry Quam Taylor. My website is quamtaylor.com, QUAMTAYLOR. / ready. I do free major gift audits if you do want to hop on the phone and talk through just what's keeping you up at night and trying to pivot up into those larger gifts. So I'd welcome anybody who hears this to hop on my calendar and just have a conversation about how maybe you can start moving into these activities.
That's awesome. Yeah, please take advantage of Sherry. And if you want to learn more about Pause for Change, you can go to www.pauseforchange.com. And we also are right now donating office hours every week, where we're working with organizations for an hour just to hear about anything. It's not a sales pitch. It's not anything. It's us just listening and being a thought partner and trying to see, like, what are you navigating? What is the greatest area of uncertainty, and how can we help you maybe think about it a little bit differently and get some advocacy within your organization going? So I thank you all for joining us, and please be in touch, and we'll send out the recording very soon.
Thanks so much.
Bye-bye. Take good care. Be well.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.